This video will concentrate on 1994, but first we'll have a look at 1992, 1993, my first years in England, and also a very brief review of the early history of crop circles. This is a typical early generic crop circle. It's just a swirl area of wheat, and look, it almost looks polished because of the perfection of the swirl. And also notice in this field those parallel lines. That's where the tractor drives up and down and sprays the field with fertilizers and other chemicals. This is what we call a pole shot, where we put the camera up on top of about 20 or 30 feet of aluminum pole and have a look at the crop circle from there. And now we're down close, and this is a typical swirl. It looks almost as though some fluid, some form of energy has rushed around in a vortex. And you see the edge. It looks a little bit rough. There are some stalks that aren't quite all the way down. This is actually a good sign. When you see something that looks like a cookie cutter, you can be a little bit suspicious. Now ignore the straight line on the left and that garbage on the left, and just concentrate on the 5 circles that form this so-called quintuplet set. There's a ring around the central circle, and this is typical of the early formations that we had, because the crop circles have been undergoing an evolution. First there were circles, then there were patterns of circles, and then rings, and then you see here straight lines. The straight lines are what really proved, once and for all, that crop circles are some kind of intelligent design. They are not done by weather, as previously scientists had believed. They used to think there was some kind of plasma vortex, an energized hurricane, a tornado sort of coming down. Now we're walking through this formation here that has the straight lines, and this is a crop which is young enough that it's still supple and soft, and in this case we get the so-called magical bends. This is a stalk of wheat, and if you'll notice at the base near the roots here, it is bending with a gentle curve. It is not crimped, it is certainly not broken, it is not damaged in any way. And this so-called magical bend you only get in a genuine formation. Now, the stalks are hollow, like a soda straw. And you know, if you try to bend a soda straw, you get it crimped. Any kind of force on a wheat or any other kind of the crops always gets a crimp. However, the magical bend, the mysterious kind, is like that, like the flexible joint in a soda straw. And that's what we find here. Again and again, in their genuine formations, you find them like that. But if you try to force them down with your feet, with a roller, with the stomping boards, the various techniques that the hoaxers use, you always crimp and crush and break the stalks. These magical bends only occur in the genuine formations. See, no crimp to that. Now another thing we look for, and it's easier to find, is individually standing stalks. Although these could be created by human means, to get dozens or hundreds of them in a formation would be very difficult. It's as if the energy momentarily ignores certain stalks. Perhaps it's almost like an accident or a noise in the computer system, if you will, if there is indeed some form of technology being used to create these crop circles from a UFO or whatever. But if you see dozens and dozens, like here, of these magically standing stalks, you know that it would just be prohibitive of a human being who was trying to make a joke to create that kind of result. This is my friend Busty Taylor. Now, Busty has been photographing crop circles as long as just about anyone else, and from the very beginning he was a pioneer, and he's also a small plane pilot. So he goes up in the air and he gets photographs from the air, and thank you very much, Busty, because he took over when I arrived in England and took me everywhere and showed me everything. Now these slides that you're watching here are from a presentation that Busty gave showing the early formations. He was the first to notice that those early formations often looked like Celtic crosses. So he's pointing out here this is what we call the quintuplet set if it was a crop circle, and a Celtic cross. These ancient sacred designs often appear as crop circles. This was the first ringed crop circle, 1986, I believe it was. And this is the first one in a crop called canola. Canola oil, in England they call it oilseed rape. And because it's so delicate, if you just touch it, you leave your fingerprints. You can't even touch it without leaving a mark. But notice here again, these are magical bends in oilseed rape. One on the top is a control sample, that's straight. And the oilseed rape, the canola, is so fragile it's like celery. And you know, you can't bend celery without snapping it. Look at this beauty. This is like the Hopi Indian sign for the four directions. Very sacred Hopi American Indian sign. Now, another thing we want to look for is so-called buckshot or grape shot. These are these little tiny circles that appear all around a formation, and they often appear days later. This is the first one that had straight lines. When the straight lines appeared, as I said, that proved that it wasn't a weather. This is Alton Barnes, 1990. This is Alton Barnes, 1991. The area there, the farm at Alton Barnes, run by Tim and Polly Carson, has had so many great crop circles over the years. It's one of the best places to go to look for them. These were elsewhere, but just to show you some of the variations in designs that we've been getting in recent years. And these are all Busty's photographs again. This is the famous Key Formation at East Kennet. Notice the large standing area in the middle there. If someone was going to hoax a formation, they had to stand in the middle and hold a rope while another guy walks around in a circle around him. There was not a mark in the middle of that tuft area. Very strange formation called the serpent or the brain. And here is the formation called Barbary Castle, near an ancient hill fort by that name. And this magnificent formation in 1991, when I saw pictures of it, by the way, here is wind damage. The very next day, the wind comes along, it can damage a field overnight. When I saw this formation, I go, oh my God, this is exactly like sacred geometry that I've been studying for years and years, since the 1960s. This book right here by Manly P. Hall. I said, I gotta look that up. And sure enough, in the middle of this Masonic Kabbalistic diagram, at the top here, see there are 7 circles around the center of this one at the top. Those 7 circles stand for the 7 angels surrounding the throne of God. The Barbary Castle design is there. It is the throne of God. And the 3 corners of it were named Father, Son, and Spirit, or as the Hindus say, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Creator, Preserver, and Destroyer. And all parts of that diagram came up as crop circles. This is the physical creation. The top part of the diagram was the spiritual realm, and the bottom half is the material realm. Now, another very important part of the crop circle enigma is that the diameters of crop circles usually conform to so-called diatonic ratios. That is, the musical notes, the white keys on the piano. And in this case, this one, the center circle, is for the note A. And you get this, according to Dr. Gerald Hawkins, who was a famous astronomer and the man who decoded Stonehenge, the diameters of the crop circles can be compared to the frequencies of the notes. So here is Barbary Castle, and when I saw this thing, I said, okay, I just have to be in England next summer, because that was 1991. So, 1992, here I go for my first flight with Busty. And the lady in the blue shirt there is Ilis. Little did I know she would become a very, very good friend of mine. She is now the chairman for the Center for Crop Circle Studies United States Network. So up we go. And here's the first crop circle that I saw from the air. Notice the little spiral on the left there. It's a golden ratio spiral. And Ilis named it the monkey tail. It's her favorite crop circle. This one is when in the Alton Barnes area now. It's a simple circle and a ring. We use those words very specifically. The one on the left is a circle, the one on the right is a ring. But the major crop circle of 1992 at Alton Barnes was this huge snail formation. And everybody said, oh, come on, crop circles don't come in the shapes of animals. We're down inside the snail here. But indeed they do. This crop circle had many genuine magical bends to it, carbonization of the nodes, another good sign. And it turned out that John Haddington discovered that the snails, sacred to the ancient peoples of the area. At Stonehenge, before the stones were put in the ground, millions of snail shells were put there first. They revered the snail, probably because it's a hermaphrodite. Now here you see the carbonization on a bent node. That blackness is no more than one cell layer deep. Now this is Avebury. It is a huge stone circle. In the Neolithic days, it's older than Stonehenge and much, much larger than Stonehenge. Sacred spot, not far from Alton Barnes. And here you see a crop circle pointing towards the stone circle. Crop circles are frequently oriented towards sacred sites. Back on the ground now. Hylas gives Cullen Andrews a big hug. And then she gave us a demonstration of dowsing out behind the airport. Notice how the rods will come apart here just at a moment. That's when she hits an energy line that happened to be running through the field there. It goes against conventional scientific teaching, but this guy, now he was very skeptical of this. He said, you got to show me. So he took the rods, and 3 times in a row, at exactly the same spot, he got results, and he was amazed. He was really unable to figure this one out. Well, it just works, folks. Trust me. This guy here, this is Richard Andrews. And Richard has been a farmer, an English farmer, all his life. And for the English government, he's actually a professional dowser. He'll go out and find clogged drainage pipes, irrigation pipes in the fields. You can see his rods were flashing there each time he crossed a line in the crop circles. Now we'll go up for another flight with Busty and see what we can find this time. Here's a very strange one. The green thing on your right, by the way, is called a tumulus. They are Neolithic sacred sites. Some people think they're burial mounds, but more often than not, there's nobody buried in them, so we don't really know what they are. This is a beauty. I love this one. This is your classic style. Well, the proportions are real crop circle is just like music. Look at this. Subtle differences in the thickness of the rings. Just beautiful. This is a tourist shot. See this white line going diagonally across your screen and fading off into the field there? It's an ancient Roman road made out of flint. And this is a stick-figured man. And I didn't get down into this one. I couldn't get anybody to take me there. All the experts said, oh, poo-poo, it's got to be a fake. But I said, we got a snail crop circle this year. Why not a stick figure? I mean, if it's real, what a crop circle! In southern England, much of the soil is very shallow, and there's chalk just a little ways underneath. And so the people will carve out onto the hillsides shapes like this wonderful prancing horse at Alton Barnes. And at Alton Barnes in 1992, there was this huge 1,000-foot diameter circle. It actually looked like it was wind damage and not a crop circle, but it's very puzzling to the experts. Very puzzling indeed. Not too far away, at an area called Oliver's Castle, was this lovely little triangle. And in fact, it had been meditated on by several different groups of people. I was in one of those groups of people. And sure enough, it appeared as a formation. And now let's go down on the ground and look at this triangle. Busty puts the pole up. See the camera on the pole? That's the short distance. That's only about 15 feet. And here we are. This is the triangle. And now let's go have a look from atop the pole, Busty. Please, can I put my camera up there? Ooh, goody goody. Here we go. Up, up, up into the air. Get a real nice bird's eye view from up here. And Busty's just guessing. just his intuition after many, many years as to where the camera is actually pointing. But he's real good. Look, I think he was trying to follow this little child. Isn't that polish beautiful? Here's another pole shot. This formation known as the split ring circle because some of those inner rings are broken into pieces that are 90 degrees each. And you can see people are measuring it. John and Barbara Sawicki with Richard Andrews, I believe. Very important to measure the crop circles and get the proper dimensions for them because it's very likely that there is information of some kind encoded into their measurements. Whoa, down we come. Yeah, there's Richard on the left in the blue shirt. This crop circle, we were the first people in there except for the farmer. And the farmer wanted to keep it a secret. Said, you guys go in it, you measure it, and then get out and don't tell anybody about it, where it is. Richard is here taking a picture actually of a standing stalk, but at that point I didn't realize what the importance of the standing stalks, and I thought he was looking at the edge. And again here, see the edge is rough. That's important. That's a good sign for a real crop circle. Walking around the perimeter. And Busty had showed me how you could see our footprints after we had walked around. They're very subtle, and they don't show up well in the video at all. You have to practically be an Indian tracker unless you get there when the crop is still green. The green crop is a different matter, and I will show you that on camera in a little while. But first, here's something very exciting. This is a photograph of a very good friend of mine. Corinne Calvé is her name. And she is a sensitive. And she said, I want you to put my photograph in the middle of a real crop circle, and we'll get a smiling face crop circle as an answer to it. In fact, there are many, many, many instances in which the circle makers have responded to people's private thoughts, their meditations, conversations with just one or two other people, and have created crop circles in response to those thoughts. And in this case, Corinne's in touch with what she calls mission control. And she must be in touch because this is what we got in response. Do you see? It's upside down at the moment, but there's the smile inside of the circle. But where are the eyes? Well, by golly, the eyes are outside of the circle, up above it. You see the two dots up there? And when she saw that, she said, oh, that's marvelous. It means my eyes are on the stars. Well, 1992 was the first year that we got crescent crop circles. This one is just so elegant. And at the top of this one, which is similar to the astrological symbol for Mercury. Now the crescent is on your right here as we walk past the Mercury symbol. The ring on our left, here's where they joined. And now we're heading towards the straight line and the big circle at the base of it. Let's go up for a pole shot here and have a look. Hey, Busty, can we put the camera on the pole? Come on. Here we go. Notice that tuft in the middle of the swirl? It's not quite on the center. It's off to the left a bit. And that's actually quite a positive sign because real crop circles are not usually perfectly symmetrical. You can be suspicious if something looks too much like a cookie cutter. But this is a good one. This was at Ogbourne St. George, very similar to the 1991 Alton Barnes formation. And here we'll get a pole shot of it. Very large. 300 feet easy, I'd say. Now we're at the other end of the formation, up at the top of the hill looking down. Give you some idea of how big that upper circle is as we pan up and pan up there. That tuft is just the middle of the uppermost circle. And this woman had the longest ponytail I've ever seen in my life. Now, this aircraft is called a Broussard. It's from the French-Algerian War, and it is literally armor-plated. It's a very heavy airplane. And that's good if you're shooting video because it flies real steady even in turbulent air. Now I want to point out a little bit more about these tumuli. The tumuli, as I said, they're sacred sites. We don't really know what they mean. They're often on ley lines, on the energy lines, and the farmers will usually plow around them like this. They'll respect these, but sometimes they plow over them. And often, even after hundreds of years of plowing, you can still see like ghosts in the field. It's something to do with the energy or the fertility of the soil or something. No good explanation has been given as to why those rings show up. They never seem to go away, even after the thing has been plowed absolutely flat. This huge formation was pointing directly towards Old Sarum. It's a hill fort castle that used to be the center of Salisbury before some king decided to move Salisbury about 10 miles away. We're looking right down on Old Sarum there. There's a nice ring circle. And this field also, notice how old roads and things also can be seen for generations. The marks are still on the field. And here's our split ring circle where Corinne's photograph, it's still in the middle of the circle. If you look really closely, you'll see there's a little white dot there in the middle. Hard to see, but definitely there. And then I panned over and I noticed that there was a combine harvester in the field, so I took a shot of this combine. It wasn't until I played the thing back when I got to the States. Look to the left, above the dust. Do you see that row of little holes? I think that those are grape shot crop circles. Bang, 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 sort of like machine gun fire. Very mysterious. I don't know what to make of that. Here we have neighboring crop circles in neighboring fields. And then we went up to Oxford to see a very special crop circle called the Mandelbrot set. Now this is a computer-generated Mandelbrot set. It's a mathematical entity dealing with fractals. Deserves a whole videotape in itself to explain what it's all about. But see that black area in the very middle? It's just like this. Now the previous year, 1991, there had been a huge Mandelbrot set. And few people knew that there was also this little one here in 1992. Unfortunately, we could not get the farmer's permission to go into the field, which is very important, and so we just got these pole shots from the side of the road. Now this lovely white stallion lives here with all his girlfriends, I think, right underneath the Alton Barnes white horse. And it was the location of this formation with curving paths, which was pretty unusual. Usually you get straight paths. Now this was one end of the formation, and now we're standing at the other end. And here's that curving path again. Crop circles are fun for young and old. And animals too. This lovely black dog just happened to be there, and when he saw me, he said, "Follow me, Peter. I'll take you around and I'll show you this crop formation." So off we went, and he often got a bit ahead of me, but I kept catching up with him again and again. It was quite magical. Here we go through one of the bends. Another circle coming up here. Our friend will be on the right momentarily. There he is. And people love to lie down in the middle of the swirls and meditate, feel the energy. Now here's a strange 90-degree turn. Notice how the crop went down and interleaved with the standing crop. It didn't sort of push it and smash it, although this isn't quite as good here, but again, look at this part. Just like fell down almost like it was combed into the standing stalks. Now we've reached the other end of the crop circle formation. This is a group of people from Glastonbury, by the way, that every year goes out on a bus tour. Highly recommended. Anything goes in crop circles. Oh my goodness, what happened to the dog? Got small. Actually, this is the same crop circle, but it was on a different day. And this little dachshund, he wanted to be right in the middle of the crop circle while it was being measured. Had good energy there. Now this is John Martineau, one of my greatest heroes in the crop circle field. He is probably the best of the surveyors and diagrammers of crop circles, carefully measures them, notices their orientation towards north, and then makes diagrams which he analyzes on his computer to find out their underlying geometry. You'll see more of those later. And this is part of the Avebury stone circle. This is so large that there's a village in the middle of the Avebury ring, and it's made largely of the stones. You see there are many stones missing in this part right here. Many hundreds of stones are missing, and they were broken up by the Christians a couple of hundred years ago to make their churches and houses in the middle of this very, very sacred, very powerful, very magical place. But thanks to a man named William Stukely, a halt was finally called to the destruction, and about 15% of the stones were saved and restored, put back to their original positions. Boy, that place, I'll tell you, is just incredible. And on some of these stones is lichen growing in circles. The most amazing lichen. Year after year I go back there and I take pictures of the same spots, and they only grow about 1/16 of an inch a year. Don't they look like crop circles? This is just like the one in Alton Barns. The ring and the circle? Wow. Now the Avebury complex, so-called, includes many other sacred sites, including this. This is Silbury Hill. It's the largest man-made earth mound in the world, and it is literally as old as the pyramids. It's very feminine and believed to have been the initiation spot for women. There have often been crop circles in the fields around Silbury, and 1992 was no exception. In fact, at the end of every year, there is usually what we call a grand finale, the most extraordinary crop circle of the year. As the summer goes along, the formations get more and more complicated, building up like a crescendo to the grand finale. And here, right near Mother Silbury's bosom, was what we came to call the charm bracelet, also known as the Wheel of Dharma. You can see how there's a main ring decorated with many different designs, and we'll come back to that strange patch of green grass there in a moment. Let's take a look at some of the various little formations, little glyphs around the outside. For instance, the crescent moon. All of these shapes are designs which we have had in crop circles in the past. This formation might very well be a form of Rosetta Stone, something to help us decode the meanings of the crop circles. And now we've come back to that grass, which is growing around a metal watering trough out there in the field where the farmers sometimes graze their animals on some years. Now, you notice that there's space there where there could have been another glyph, but instead there's a watering trough. And I think that's very significant because crop circles are often found over underground water, nearby streams, wells. There's definitely a connection between crop circles and water. So I think that that literally means water. something to help to decode the formation. Busty's getting some of his world-famous photographs. Let's zoom down over his shoulder here and get another look. And come in on this odd lumpy shape here, which is made out of many overlapping rings. At first glance, you might think it was sort of a Mandelbrot set shape, but it's not. It's definitely not symmetrical. And when I showed this to a friend of mine from the eastern part of England, John Sayer, he said, "Oh, that's exactly like the crop circles we have in my part of the country." So again, these glyphs are like a listing of different crop circle designs that we've had in the past. So here's a look from atop the pole. Bird's eye view. And we'll pan around, and now up close to the camera comes the 4 directions. And the Hopis say that in addition to north, south, east, and west, in the very middle, that little tiny circle, that represents the 5th direction, which is up, or spirit. There's the crescent moon. And this ring coming up here with a little dumbbell circle attached to it. In a moment, we'll walk through it. Here we go. Now I'm going to take you on a walk all the way around the main ring, and we'll see most of the interesting details on this grand finale charm bracelet. Here comes the crescent moon up ahead. And I should say, by the way, that I was very, very lucky because this crop circle was cut down within hours after I took these shots. And it only appeared the day before. Busty went flying and discovered the crop circle. It was brand new. We took those pictures you saw a moment ago. And then we took these pictures about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, real early in the morning. And then the harvesting machine came through and cut it down. And John Martineau, by the way, was there trying to measure it while the machine was gobbling up the field, and he had to dodge the blades of the harvester, and it was quite harrowing for him. But Busty and I were there, had it all to ourselves. That was the Trident Formation at the northernmost part of the circle. And now we're approaching this enigma within an enigma, and I don't mean Busty and the pole. It's the watering trough. You'll get a close look at it here. And notice how the ring cuts through the green grass, which gets a little bit rough. And then there's wind damage beyond that. Then we look left and see Mother Silbury off in the distance. Then we jump to the glyph that has the little circles orbiting around it. Right over here, you'll see one of them. And look at their centers. They're all different. This one is sort of a peaked... It's almost like Silbury Hill itself in a way. Lifted up in the middle there. This one is like a bird's nest. And we do occasionally get these mind-boggling centers like this. It's like the energy is like almost like a liquid, and it's swirling around like a whirlpool. Then this one is a little bit more like your average central swirl. It's flat, but it's still very, very pretty. Very, very, very nice. And last but not least, at the very middle of the whole formation, in the spirit circle, lovely, fluffy, large, fluffy middle. So that was the grand finale of 1992. And here we see Busty and another very good friend of mine, Ron Jones, trudging off into the morning mist. But before we go to 93, let's have a flashback. This is the group of people from Glastonbury, and among them was an old gentleman who was struggling to get into the crop circle on his own. He insisted on doing it on his own. So I had to speak to him and ask him why this had been so important to him. Might I talk with you on camera?
Sure.
Yes. What is your name, sir?
Mine is Dr. Lester Smith.
And I understand that you discovered vitamin B12.
That's right, yes. Well, I managed to isolate it anyway from liver. When we had known since 1926 that there was an active principle in liver, you see. I got my fellowship of the Royal Society for that.
Indeed.
Quite a very rare honour for someone working in industry at that time.
Huh.
There are only about 600, and they're mostly university professors, almost entitled to it by right of long service.
Well, as someone who's very familiar with biology and the chemistry, biochemistry, I guess.
Yes, yes.
What do you think is going on out here in the fields?
Well, I'm most interested in this change that's taking place in the actual stalks of the corn, where they appear to have been softened as if by a blast of steam or something, and then bent over, and as they go on growing, and then the tips sometimes come up.
Yes.
So they're not damaged; they're just bent, you see, and I think it's some very wonderful natural force that can do that. And I don't know what it is. It's nothing known to science, as far as I understand. So I think it must be done by supernatural agents.
Indeed. Indeed.
And another strange phenomenon that you may have heard of is the carbonization of the external surface of the corn, just at the point where this has happened.
Right.
And that's like nothing that can be done by human means, apparently.
I'm proud to say that I interviewed Dr. Lester Smith, who passed away shortly thereafter. In 1993, one of my childhood dreams came true. I got to go inside of Stonehenge. This magnificent temple is a testament to the megalithic stoneworkers' genius. It not only is truly a computer for the seasons and for the eclipses of the moon, but it is a focuser and generator of energy, the most incredible energy. I was meditating in the middle of that circle, and I never have had such a powerful experience in my life. There's something very special about southern England, folks. Well, here's the first crop circle of 1993, and it is in the bright yellow canola plants, and it's up by Oxford, and this guy is Anthony Cheek. He is the CCCS officer there in Oxford. And what's this? Maybe this is what makes the crop circles. Here is Avebury. You can clearly see the remaining stones there. A whole village in the middle. And less than a mile away, at a place called North Farm, was the second crop circle of the year. This is also in canola. Look at how beautiful that bright yellow those flowers are. They're so delicate, too. We pinpointed it on the map, and the next day put the poles on top of the car for the first time that year. And along came Leonie Starr, the astrologer of the crop circles. She's wearing a t-shirt I designed there, by the way. And it also has a lovely, delicate honey scent to it. I love it. Notice that a lot of these plants are springing back up. They're bushy. They were never broken. If they're broken, they would have died. But they're coming back up again. The plants do that naturally to survive. They've been pushed down. If they're still green, plants will go back up towards the sun again. And you can see that it's just thriving down there. Taking the diameter, of course. Then I got a close-up of the plants on the laying down. And then I thought, well, let me see if I can bend one without breaking it. Impossible. I did it dozens of times. And before it reaches 90-degree turn, snap. Always. It won't even bend with a kink to it. It has to break, or else it stands straight back up again. And here's one of the magically bent stalks. Just above my fingers, you can see it curving to the right and going off towards 1 o'clock there. That's a magical bend in canola. Back over by Avebury. This is called the Cove. They are the tallest stones at Avebury. Everybody loves them. And this one has one of the few carvings on the stone. For the most part, they're completely undecorated. And here's where the Space Age meets the Stone Age. Again, the beautiful lichen. And again, our beautiful Mother Silbury. And across the road from her was our first ringed circle of 1993, with the center splayed straight out. It wasn't a swirl. The stalks were going radially out from the center. This was another case where the farmer would not allow us on the land, so to get pictures, we went up on top of Silbury Hill, and there you see it. And then a few minutes later, along came the tractor with a sprayer. And this is why the tram lines are in most of the fields in England. And it's really better this way. In America, we spray from the air, but that's much more polluting than doing it directly right above the plants like this. There's the crop circle in the foreground. Then we went up and we saw this up by Avebury. And I don't know, I'll tell you, a crop circle, to me, the most important thing is, does it sing to me? Does it resonate? Does it talk to me? And that one never did much for me at all, I must say. Okay, in the belief that ignorance is not bliss, and that it's important to know what your enemy is up to, let's have a look at how a human being can fabricate a crop circle. This young man is Jim Schnabel. He claims that he made the charm bracelet by Silbury Hill. And to try and prove it, he was given an opportunity to do so in front of a group of judges. You see, he starts by tromping out a thin ring with his feet, and then he goes around with a so-called stomping board and flattens down the crop inside of that ring. Stomping board is just a piece of wood that goes underneath the foot, and then you hold it up with a pair of strings like reins. And now he makes a larger diameter. The circle that he flattened so far is like the very, very middle of the charm bracelet, which was the spirit circle in the center of the 4 directions. Now he is tromping out a ring that will define the equivalent of the 4 directions outer perimeter, but instead of dividing it in 4 ways, he divided it into 3. And what that did was create the radiation symbol, the international symbol for radiation hazard. This is one of the 3 sections here that he's flattening down. And Busty and I were the only ones allowed in the field with him while he was working, so that he couldn't say that he had been distracted and unable to do his work properly. Here he is finishing the 3rd of the sections of the radiation symbol. And now, going around the outermost perimeter, the big ring on which all the little glyphs are placed, about 200 feet in diameter. He has to hold the string way up so that it doesn't get caught on the crop. And then he goes around with a garden roller. This is kind of his trademark. He can work very fast this way. I noticed that the side of it had a radiation symbol of its own on his garden roller there. He didn't know that. It's kind of a cosmic joke, I think. Now he starts to make some of the little grape shot type circles around. And in this, he is considered by his peers, the other hoaxers, to be the very best. They call him the king of grape shot, actually. So I wanted to really look at this pretty closely and see just how good he was. And bear in mind, we're going to want to compare this to the charm bracelet itself. So after having flattened the main part of this little circle with his feet, then he goes in with his hands, and he's going to simulate the bird's nest effect on this one. So watch closely. I see. Aha, pat it into place. Okay, compare this with this. Okay, let's give him the benefit of a doubt. Let's say, well, maybe, it's hard to say. What about this? This is another one, another grape shot he's creating, and he just stomps this one flat as a pancake. Do you accept that? Compare it with the center of the real charm bracelet. Light and fluffy. It's up almost 6 inches high. Nobody stomped around on that one. Sorry, Jim, I don't think so. And here, I promised I would show you footprints in green wheat. Every single step that he took left unmistakable patterns of the tread of his sneakers. The stalks are covered with like a white yeast that grows on them. And it's just so delicate, like the rape plant. You can't touch them, even lightly with your finger without leaving a mark. So every single footprint shows as clear as a bell. And I've been in formations that do not show a hint of such damage. So what do you think, Jim? It took him over 4 hours, working in broad daylight, mind you, and I don't think it's anything like the elegance of the real charm bracelet. Listen to this.
I mean, I think I've always been made clear that there's a genuine phenomenon behind it all, but I think it's rare and it's restricted to simple circles. And I think they're rough circles. I don't think there's...
Whoops, bad edit. He went on to say that he didn't think that the real phenomenon was cookie cutter perfect, and of course, we've all been saying that all along anyway. Back at the Alton Barnes area, well, not too far away anyway, here's a crop circle, a ring actually, going around a T-junction in a road. At first, when people were told about this, they thought, oh yeah, right, that's got to be a joke. But in fact, it was full of magically standing stalks, dozens of magically bent stalks. It was a magnificent formation. And in fact, for years, people have been saying, how come crop circles are always right in the middle of the field somewhere? Why don't they overlap between, two different fields or something? Well, here we had roads going through it. You could drive right through this crop circle, and if you didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't have a clue that you were there. It was at a location called West Overton, about halfway between Alton Barnes and Avebury. And here's John Blake, and he's pointing out that there were just dozens of these magically standing stalks. So he said, let's do a test. Let's see if we can push one down. Will it come back up again? No. It's permanently weakened. It will not come back up again. You couldn't go over that with your feet or with a roller or something and have them pop back up. There were just dozens of them. Prime example of standing stalks. And I would go down and I would test them again and again with my finger to see if there was any hint of weakness. But look at that. Immaculate. And here's Sam Blake. He's dowsing with one rod. And here are some of the little grape shot circles that were in the neighborhood of the T-junction. Very pretty. Look, there's another one over there. Oh, this is a beauty. Look at this one. Now, people have already walked into this one. There's a path going in. There's a lovely little tuft in the middle. Little piece of magic. And then Sam found another one way up the road. This was quite a conversation piece, this crop ring, with all its little circles around it. Dowsed wonderfully, too, the people who came. And now look, a few days later, about a week later, there appeared another formation. This became known as the Overton Oval because the main flattened part was not round. And it, too, was full of magically standing stalks. And a very interesting flow. Look at all those standing stalks. Hundreds of them. With the flow going right through them, you see. And then it took odd twists and turns. And up near the top, there was a circle at the top, and above that circle was like a bushy patch of canola. The field was wheat, mind you, green wheat, and there was this canola patch at the very top. Apparently, the seed planting machine had briefly paused while it was planting the wheat and allowed the previous year's crop of canola to come up. Just like the watering trough and the charm bracelet, this canola was part of the design. And in fact, the whole formation had to have been planned around it. See, there it is at the very top of the picture. Now this is quite extraordinary. It looks like there's tram lines in this field, but really they're just sort of residual ghosts that are left from the planting machine. There was crop growing up everywhere in this field. And there's a crop circle in the middle. If hoaxers got there, they'd have to have come down by a helicopter, I'll tell you. Because when we tried to walk out there, it was impossible to put our feet somewhere without trampling the crop. A simple circle. The crop is barley. That's Ilis and Kathleen. And we are the first people into this virgin crop circle. Are we happy? I promise you we are. So the next step is it.
1, 2,
3. Well, here we are. Isn't that lovely?
That's not going to happen a whole lot of times.
Right. Oh, boy. So this was an organic farm, never sprayed with pesticides, no tram lines in the fields. This was the path that we made, and we tried our best not to damage it. We were tiptoeing our way around. But 360 degrees, I walked both directions around this circle looking for any hint of any way that somebody could have come in. Nothing. And the center, nice little squirrel. Mind you, it's already several weeks old, actually. If we hadn't discovered it from the air, nobody would have known it was there. It wasn't visible from driving along the ground. And we found a lovable, magical bent stalk, which I dug up with my Swiss Army knife. And it had a little baby shoot coming up from the base there. Here, we'll zoom in. You can see little green shoot going straight up, and it shows you the vertical and how nice and curved and down flat the big stalks were. Now, back at Stonehenge, we went there with a group of people, and after about an hour, all of them left except for me and Kathleen. This is Kathleen. So she and I stayed there for 45 minutes, all alone in Stonehenge. And we had that fantastic meditation together. This is Colette Dowell. You've probably seen her on TV being interviewed because she's been abducted by aliens more times than she cares to think about. In fact, her main interest is not UFOs, but crop circles. And she's very good at measuring them. And as a mathematician, then she analyzes them. She's, in fact, often worked with Gerald Hawkins on the proportions of the crop circles. And it's a very good education here to watch how she uses her compass and the tape measure to get the accurate diagram of this little crop circle here at Alton Barns. With the string lined up to the compass, you get your relationship to north for each of the details, and then the tape measure off of this cardboard disc, and the disc is marked in fractions of a circle. And of course, finally, she has to write it down. So here's her preliminary diagram with the first measurement in it. And believe it or not, the Alton Barns East Field only had 2 very minor formations in it this year, and that was one of them. So we're back up in the air again, and in 1993 there were some really beautiful crop circles. I call this one the star map. Reminds me of some kind of constellation or something. Oh, those are just cattle that got loose into a field and went running around in a field. And this was the biggest formation of 1993. There you get a snapshot of that one, Busty. As we zoom down, see these details in the middle of it. There's like an E-shaped thing and then a curlicue below that. In a moment, we'll go down in and have a look at that curlicue. Through the magic of television, there it is. Ilis found that to be her favorite place in this formation. She spent a long time meditating here. And now across from it is the E shape. And looking back towards the big ring. And I think here we're going around the ring. Now here's an aerial of a formation at Etchelhampton. And a sort of a plumed serpent formation. The harvesting machine busy gobbling up. This is really strange. Look, it splays out straight from the middle, going straight out. Very unusual formation. And this one here has 2 little grape shot that are right halfway between the tram lines. Not a mark on the field going out towards those little grape shot. So I went right down there as fast as I could, and I'm holding the camera up over my head as I walk down the tram lines to try and get a look at those grape shots. Here's the mother circle there. It was tangent to the tram line. Notice that it's turning green because it's so old that grass is growing up. There's a lot of standing stalks. And then I walked into the field. I must admit, I had to get a closer look at those little grape shot. I figured, what the hey? They're going to come in there with a harvesting machine any day now anyhow. Somebody better take some pictures of it before it's gone. The center of this grape shot was twisted around and around and around, almost like what they call a corn dolly. The ancient people used to take the last harvest of the crop and weave them into little dollies as fertility symbols for the following year. Now here's Colin Andrews, and he called up Busty and he said, "Oh, we gotta fly right away. There's a crescent moon formation in the field exactly as it was predicted by the Hopi elders. And there's a harvesting machine there right now cutting down the field." So we went out immediately, and we got this shot, and lo and behold, one right after the other, there were a total of 5 formations along what's called the Hog's Back, down between Guilford and Farnham in southern England. This is a nice example of sacred geometry. Gerald Hawkins has shown that this should have been one of Euclid's geometric theorems. But it wasn't. He's found several such magnificent, elegant, simple, extraordinary variations in geometry in the crop circles that they really belong, mathematically, truly belong into Euclid's theorems of geometry. Thumbs up. Colin really liked that. Yeah, he really liked that flight. And then he was talking about the Hopi prophecy, and I happened to notice he was wearing a very interesting ring, and I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Well, there's the Hopi Four Directions. Notice the spirit circle is a little gold ball on the top. And there's the Hopi Hand of Friendship. And on the bottom, where nobody would have seen it, was the crescent formation that we had just been to see." And then on Eilis's last day there, in fact, we had spent the whole night at Alton Barnes, up all night on a crop watch, hoping to see a UFO or a crop circle form or something, and we didn't, and she was kind of disappointed. But as we were driving past Silbury Hill, there was a brand new formation. Basically, it came up behind our backs. And so at 6 o'clock in the morning, you can see her breath, a lovely golden sunlight just coming up. We were the first people into this absolutely crisp, beautiful, brand new virgin formation. Very, very, very exciting moment. Happened to be shaped almost exactly like the free access wheelchair symbol that they put in parking lots and things. And there's a lot of interpretations as to why that would have been the symbol. Maybe they're trying to tell us something, folks. But it had jillions of the standing stalks. And look at the flow here as we're coming up on the inside of the wheel of the wheelchair where it meets the arm around the hub. Look how it all sweeps together. Right in that upper inside corner. And this is sort of the hand on the wheelchair arm. Usually I don't like my shadow in the picture, but that was kind of dramatic. And then I got this beautiful shot of Eilis, thanking the circle makers because in 3 hours she'd be on the plane going back to the States, and here was this wonderful gift for her. Thank you, circle makers. And this is the grand finale of 93. As you can see, there's a star surrounded by flower petals. It's exactly like a certain kind of mandala, which has lotus petals going around the outside. So it became known as the Bythorn Mandala because of the nearby town of Bythorn. Now we're walking up towards the very center of the whole formation. It's already got green grass growing up in it. This is the tip of one of the lotus petals. Now, we couldn't afford to fly up there. It was hundreds of miles away, and aircraft rental is so expensive in England. But we took all day, we drove up there, and we got these pole shots. As far as I know, it's the only video pole shots. That dark patch is thistles growing wild in the wheat. And now we're looking straight up towards the top of the hill. The formation was on the slope of the hill, and it wasn't perfectly round. The oval of it was exactly complementary to if there had been a beam of energy coming straight down from above. Now, this formation really was result terrible arguments in the crop circle community because a young man claimed to have made this formation, and certain people took his side and other people took the side that it was genuine. And, you know, I've reached a point where I don't want to hear those arguments anymore. If the formation resonates for me, if it's beautiful, if it sings to my heart, then that's what counts. These things are affecting humanity, and that's what counts. These thin lines going around the perimeter of the formation were caused by a woman who couldn't bear to step inside. And so ends 1993. The 1994 season began very early. There were even some markings in the crops in April. Now, these still photographs were taken before I got there by Steve Patterson. Now, Steve Patterson is a pilot and a professional photographer, and since Busty has been unable to fly this year because, unfortunately, he's had to take a job driving a truck 6 days a week, so Steve Patterson is a friend of his, and he's been taking absolutely excellent, extraordinary photographs, and I highly recommend that you contact Steve Patterson to get the best photographs of the 1994 formations. That's Steve's plane, and in fact, Busty often rents Steve's plane. So up we go. This is my first flight of 1994, and this is a rather classical-looking formation down by Danebury Ring, which is a hill fort south of Andover. And this, not only does it have these half rings going down the length of its body, but this S-shaped swirl that reverses direction. Very rare. Just gorgeous. Isn't that spectacular? That was at Clatford. And then, also south of Andover, at Cholderton, was this pretty little ratchet, very much like one of the corners of Barbary Castle, you see. Not exactly the same. And here's Steve Patterson, and he's just showing me his photographs that he had taken. I said, wow, this is fantastic. Let's go see this right away. And so we did. It is obviously some kind of insect shape. Some people call it the bee, some people call it a spider, but it's only got 6 legs, so it must be an insect and not an arachnid. But whatever it is, it was right nearby Barbary Castle, where the Great Triangle was 3 years earlier. And certainly one of the most mysterious. What are they trying to tell us? Are they insects? We got a lot of insects and scorpions this year. This one became known as the claw, although some people thought it looked like an insect larva. The designs of 1994 have just gone through the roof. They're just unlike anything that has ever happened before. And look at this, the infinity symbol. There were strange happenings in that one. And Mama Silbury had a formation early in the summer. There were UFOs seen there, and the next morning this incredible, crazy crop circle was there. There must be drunken ETs that made this one, but on the ground it was beautifully laid. Meanwhile, at Alton Barnes in the east field, this Vessia Pisces formation came up. It's not the CBS Eye. They don't have CBS in England. And nearby, this incredible galaxy, my favorite formation of 1994. Isn't that beautiful? Look at those crescents. And it's not really circular inside. I've analyzed the geometry of this. That is very, very complicated. There are a series of different diameters all meeting together to form this shape. And this I call the King Scorpion. We did have many scorpion-like formations. This was by far the largest, near a town called Devizes. See the little scorpion hook on the tail there? There's no question what it's supposed to be. And it's huge. The tram lines are about 60 feet apart. So this puppy's over 300 feet long, easy. And look at the proportions on the head. Aren't they beautiful? And the jaws, the mandibles, are exactly like that insect form by Barbary Castle this year. Family resemblance for sure. But the farmer was livid, absolutely fit to kill. He says, my field's been vandalized. And nobody was allowed in that field. Nobody. He stood guard over it to keep people out of the field. And look at this beauty. We're back over by the Oliver's Castle area now, where that nice little triangle came in 92. And isn't this beautiful? Now here we are, Ilis and Paul Weige. We're up on the so-called castle, the hill overlooking the field. Look at the sun shining on that. The number of grape shot changed over the summer. First there was one, then there was two, and then finally there was three. And most people would drive up to the top of Oliver's Castle, and they found out that the slope was so steep that you really couldn't get down it without sliding on your bottom. And then it was almost impossible to get back up again. Those people were standing where the previous shot was taken from. I found out actually on the map that there was a way to approach it from a totally different direction, from miles away. And so we actually got there by car. We hardly had to walk at all. When I asked for the farmer's permission, I said, "You've got a beautiful crop circle on your land." And he says, "I know." And I offered to pay him to go in, and he says, "That's okay." He says, "You go in and enjoy it." He says, "I'm going to cut it down tomorrow." And the light was just sumptuous. Look at this late afternoon sun. Oranges and blues in the light. And this is the middle crescent. There's a larger one outside of this. So this is a full 360 degrees. This formation with its curling tail is one of the Scorpion series. The smallest circle was 7 inches in diameter at the end of that. And there were 21 of them altogether, plus that big ring. That was like the 21 comet fragments that hit Jupiter. 2 Americans, Sharon and Dwayne Warren, had made this exact design for their T-shirts. And when they got to England, they were told that the day before, this beauty had arrived in the field. A little scorpion with a crescent in it. And I think this is probably a joke. And this, too, this appeared right next to the route of the Tour de France bicycle race. So somebody put this warning sign up along one of the roads. And then Steve and I heard about a huge formation. It was up north, and so we went flying through the clouds, flying on instruments, and for the first time in my life I felt a little nervous because the windows went as white as milk. You couldn't see a thing outside. But when we got there, we came down out of the clouds, and here was this big baby stretching out, disappearing into the mist. So as we fly by, I'll zoom in and we'll look at the details. Circles, arcs, rings, humongous rings, and a few more arcs, circles, and rings. Then when I'm looking back and getting this shot of the whole length of the thing, and suddenly Steve puts the wing down to make a sharp 90-degree turn. And I'm looking straight down at the ground out of the open window. My seatbelt was off so I could maneuver to get a good position. But like a good reporter, I kept my camera on the thing, but I can tell you my heart was really going thumpity, thumpity, thump. I was literally kneeling on the wall of the plane there for a few moments, looking straight down out of that window. And then he did it again. But at least this time I was sort of ready for it. And here's that beautiful galaxy again. And I really wanted to go see this. So I went with a couple of American friends, Sean Randall and Barbara Lamb, who had rented a car. And when we got there, it was just in time, because the harvesting machine was in the field. I'll tell you, my intuition that day was, you gotta see this formation. You gotta go to the galaxy. You've got to go to the galaxy. And indeed, we had it to ourselves for about 30 minutes, and then along came the gobbling machine and gobbled it all up. So I quickly went about documenting this most cosmic of all the formations that I've ever been to. Look how the swirl flows around these standing tufts and rings, these stars and planets probably. It was funny, I felt almost like I was under remote control, like there was an agenda that I was to perform here when I was taking these shots. Like everything just fell into place. As I went around, every shot just dovetailed into the next one. You know what these things are, of course. Like this. I just finished this shot of the stalk, turned around, and there was Sean, being like a sprite, really loving those last seconds in this formation. Go for it, Sean. And then I saw that Barbara was in prayer, and I felt like I might be intruding, but it was such a good message, this shot. I was compelled. That day was almost out of my control. And then along comes the Grim Reaper. And we got thinking about, what does it mean? Crop circles are not like sculpture. They don't last forever. They're more like music or dance, performance art. They sort of happen and then they're gone. Now, why is that? Is this a tragedy? Most people are really upset when they see the harvesting machine come, and I've been one of them. Look at it. It's like a big monster. It's a lot like a giant crab or a scorpion itself. Look at those claws. Munch, 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 munch. But then Sean began to explain her feelings, and I really think that something was speaking through her, trying to explain why it's all right.
To me, there's something very liberating about watching this circle be opened up as it's being harvested. Very liberating, like the energy of the circle is now free to go off into the other dimensions of its communicating to us through the energy, the pictures, the art, the contribution it's made, the appreciation of it. There's something liberating about it. It doesn't have to go on in this third dimensional existence anymore to keep giving to us, and it's like free. It's open circle. The circle is open now. It can be harvested to go on and give in new ways. I find it, I don't know why. I thought it'd feel real sad, and I don't.
I did feel, I started to cry back there a while ago, but I don't feel it now.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. It's like, it's meant to be. If they wanted to put them in something permanent, they would do that.
Right.
This is part of the lesson.
It is part of, you appreciate the moment, you take it in for the moment, and then you let it go. And as you let it go, it goes on to it has given its gift. It's like food that we eat. You know, it consciously gives itself to us. The Aborigines feel that food is consciously making the choice, and certain growth and vegetables and fruits are constant. The Aborigines really feel this, and they thank the being of life that food is before they eat it, because they know that food has consciously chosen to be there for them as a gift. And this is what this is like. This is why this feels very freeing to let it go. It's like, thank you. Also, time is forever.
That's right, each moment.
Each moment is the illusion of time passing is only an illusion. Every moment is eternal. So this is not an ending. This is forever. It's going to go on and on.
That will be there.
Look at this, how it stays.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sean. Well, by this time, the fields were almost all cut, and it looked like the season was just about over. Went up for one more flight with Steve. And in addition to this beautiful balloon, over by Avebury was the grand finale of 1994. Now, obviously, it's like a spider's web, but there's more to it than that. Inside are a series of rings, totally unlike a normal web. And I myself am going to be very anxious to see what Gerald Hawkins has to say about the ratios of those diameters. Here Steve's going to take some shots. He uses a 70mm camera that gives really good high-resolution, crisp images. Click! One very unusual thing about this formation is that it occurred over 2 separate nights. On the first night, the basic shape of it occurred, and on the second night, the lines forming the web were laid down. Well, I could hardly wait to get to the pub where the gang hangs out. All the crop circle people go to the Barge Inn pub. Here's my little video player. And what do you think of this, guys?
Oh my God! Peter, you should have seen this yesterday. There's nothing like this.
That would be very complicated. Spider-Man!
Oh my God!
Spider-Man!
Oh, look at that curly Q on the end.
That's impressive.
That might be the grand finale.
You think so?
That might be the grand finale.
Oh.
That's exciting, I admit. I didn't realize it was that complex. This was that.
Not gonna be here.
Thruxton Golf Victor will be leaving the circuit to the north. Like to change now at Boscombe 1267. Boscombe Golf Sierra Echo Victor Echo. Boscombe Golf Sierra Echo Victor Echo, Cessna 172 just airborne from Thruxton to route northbound to operate 4 miles to the east of Swindon. I'd like to climb to 1,500 feet with a radar information service, please. 3702 Golf Victor Echo.
So 1994 was arguably the best year for crop circles ever. Totally different look. Insects, scorpions, galaxies. We never expected these. But then we never expected the Barbary Castle Triangle, or the Charm Bracelet, or the Bythorn Mandala either. So here, as we watch Pete Emery plowing Alton Barns, I can only wonder what will be there in 1995. Well, as I originally edited it for my lectures, this is where my tape stops. However, I've got about half an hour of blank footage left here, so for the people that are buying copies of my cassettes, I'm going to add on some additional material. There's some great interviews, a segment of a TV show with me and Ilis, and John Martineau presenting his geometric analysis of the crop circles. First, one of my favorite people in the world, Polly Carson, who with her husband Tim farms Alton Barns. What do you think is the most important thing that the world outside should know about crop circles?
Oh, blimey. I think, well, I mean, I think before I say that, I mean, I think the most important thing that people should know is whether or not they're real. I have a gut feeling that these things are coming from. They are an attempt at communication. They are trying to tell us something. I don't believe that they are man-made. However, there is a possibility, and there's only a very small one, I'm sure, that some people believe that they could be man-made. Weapons testing and things like that. The military could be doing it. And so, assuming that isn't, that it isn't the military, then I'm absolutely convinced there is no other way that they could be man-made. And if they're not, then what are they? They're not random. They are deliberate. And if you accept that they're not random, and that they're deliberate, then there must be an intelligence behind it. There must be some form of intelligence doing it, and so that's the important thing that people should know, is that these things are real, and I think it should be a matter of great importance that we look at them and try and understand them. It seems to me everybody's very busy trying to prove that they're hoaxes and things like that. I think it should be far more important that we should work on the premise that they're not hoaxes, and let's really try and have a look and see what on earth they are.
Right.
Somebody actually said to me, how have crop circles changed your life? And I explained to them how the number of times when I'm having this talk with somebody on one sort of side about the most incredible things, like trying to communicate with an alien intelligence, and at the same time saying, how many slices of toast do you want? There I can be at the breakfast table, and that's how it's changed our lives. That our ordinary lives carry on. You've got to carry on feeding the kids and doing the washing, but at the same time, you tend to have these amazing conversations with people. So, but the kids still come and pester and stuff, and life's just got to go on, and can't drop everything just for the sake of crops.
And the cows still have to be fed.
Yeah, and milk and everything else has to, to go on.
What are some of the more extraordinary events that have taken place around here?
Well, there's been a whole catalogue, really. It's been, it's almost as if whatever is doing this is introducing us slowly to the more bizarre aspects of things, so that if something really bizarre happens, we're not going to be quite so shocked as we will be otherwise, because we are becoming, quite blasé about discussing, sort of discussing subjects that you would maybe a few years ago we would only have thought of discussing after a sort of an evening meal with a couple of bottles of wine, sort of around about 1 in the morning. But now they're commonplace things to discuss those. But there's been quite a few events. There's been the 2 videos that have been made in this area of the small object or light or whatever it is that seems to be having a look at crop circles. Whether it's anything that made them or not, I don't know. And those are very interesting, especially as it was our neighbour's tractor driver who actually saw it. And before he knew it was video, he'd actually seen it. And there have been eyewitness accounts of that thing as well. And then there's been lots of reports of lights in the sky. We ourselves had a light come through the house last year, which was very interesting, in August last year. 6 people in the kitchen, having been to verify a crop circle. And it was a bright sunny day, morning, and a light just came across the kitchen. You've seen our kitchen, it's quite long. It sort of came diagonally across the kitchen. And 5 people of the 6 saw it. 1 man had his head down right and he didn't see it.
Oh.
Busty Taylor was in there.
Oh, he saw it as well?
Yeah. So talk to him about it. He's experienced it before, that light. And that was staggering. Because I know that didn't have an ordinary explanation. So yes, there's been, apart from lots of crop circles, there have been other things as well.
I bet you've met a lot of interesting people who are come to see.
Yeah, met a lot of weirdos as well. Met the whole gambit, I can tell you. But all with their, I think I probably heard every explanation in crop circles. And that is the advantage of being the farmer. We don't have to go looking and attending conferences and reading magazines, because actually everybody wants to come here and tell us about things, which is great. But it does mean that we do meet everybody. But we have met some fantastically interesting people here. Yeah, and there's been some amazing conversations held in the kitchen. There have been times when we've had everything from sort of nuclear physicists and very straight scientists through to diviners and channelers all thrashing at different opinions and all working for the same thing, really, towards an understanding. So yes, I mean, our summers are very exciting. There's no doubt about it. Exhausting, but exciting.
Well, thank you very much for letting me carve your stone and for talking to me and everything.
Well,
really...
thank you for carving the stone. That is fantastic. I don't know if you heard the kids. I asked the kids what they thought, and they said it's brilliant. It's really great.
Oh.
And the kids are really thrilled. So
oh, great.
it's nice, isn't it? The next generations are. You know,
that's right.
Because, I mean, if these things carry on, I mean, they'll grow up with them. My daughter doesn't remember a time without crop circles. She just thinks it's something that always happens every summer. That everybody's got crop circles. Yeah.
That interview was done in 1992. Here's Tim looking at the stone carving that I was talking about. I'm very, very proud of this. This is one of my very first crop circle stone carvings. And there it is, right there on the farm in Alton Barns, where this very spectacular formation. Well, I want to do a quick commercial for the barge here, because this pub is the place to be if you want to network with people right there in Alton Barns, find out where the new crop circles are. And June and Adrian, who run it, are so nice. And for a very reasonable fee, you can pitch your tent there, or you can rent a small house trailer from them. I highly recommend it. Well, here comes Polly. Let's hear about the latest sightings at Alton Barns.
Yeah, Peter.
Yes.
Could you hang on to this horse?
Sure.
You can't video today, which was even better.
Would you say that again about the quality of the year so far?
It's been a great year. Whoa, stand!
Oh.
Peter, don't try and video me talking about crop circles when I'm trying to manage it.
Okay, this is an interview with Polly Carson concerning her latest exceptional experiences here at Alton Barns. And well, without any further ado, Polly, would you explain what happened?
Yes, I can't remember the date, I'm afraid, but it was on a Sunday afternoon in the summer, and it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was taking our old horse for a ride along a track leading from the farm up towards Woodborough Hill. We were going along quite nicely, but she's an old horse and a bit lazy and sometimes stops and you have to kick her on. We were going along and she stopped, and I just assumed this was one of her usual breaks, kicked her on, urged her to go forward. She wouldn't, and I noticed she was staring at something on her left-hand side. I followed her gaze and to my amazement saw a round black object. It was just a black circle, and the blackest black I've ever seen. Just very, very, very black. I couldn't really estimate its distance because I didn't know what size it was. I couldn't tell how close it was to me, but I got the feeling that it was just in front of a hedge, and it was hovering over a crop of wheat. I'd say it was probably about 30 yards from me, and probably about the size of a football, but that's a real guess. I saw it moved along the top of the crop for about 3 seconds, about a count of 3, and then completely disappeared. I don't know whether it went up or down or back, but it just went. It was very short sighting, but it was certainly long enough for me to know that I'd seen it. And I had the corroboration of the horse, because she would then refuse to go on. She wouldn't go on. And I kicked her on, and she didn't rear. She actually brought her front legs up and down again in an effort to say, well, I'm just not going to go. I got off the horse and I led her past the spot. As I led her, she was looking from side to side. I then got on and rode and to people who lived not too far away and told them of what I'd seen.
There have been some other people have seen similar.
Yes, I think it was no more than 10 days later. It was sometime in the next 10 days. A crop circle researcher, John Martineau, reported to various people that he'd seen exactly the same thing. Not in the exact spot, but certainly in that area. I mean, just meters away from where I'd seen it. I actually, he had no idea I'd seen it, and I only recently discovered that he'd seen it. I've also discovered that it was seen the year before by a researcher called Andy Collins, and he saw it in the same field as I saw it, the same area. So again, only meters away from where I'd seen it. So that made me feel good that other people had seen it too. If I was to list all the things that have happened in this village over the last few years, we'd be here for a long time. I mean, it is in fact now the subject of a book. I mean, there is a whole book on the last few years here. I mean, there's been amazing. I mean, and not just crop circle researchers. I mean, people that live and work here and have been here for 40, 50 years are seeing things that they've never seen before. And they're seeing them in the winter too, not just in the summer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Polycarp. Living only a minute or two walk away from the East Field is Francine Blake, who's also had some fascinating experiences. What are some of the other anomalous experiences you've had in the area that might or might not be associated directly with crop circles?
Well, this is an area that has a long history of mystery. In fact, Marlborough was called Merlin Borough. Yes, yes, in the past. And there's Silbury Hill, of course, which is very well known, but there's what is called the Merlin Mound. So from antiquity, it was a land of mystery connected with the Merlin and the Mage and so on. Near here, there is a hill called Golden Bowl Hill, where there has been seen, light phenomena for centuries, not just recently. I have seen some light phenomena. I've seen one light phenomena which left a very strong impression, where we saw some columns of light, but happening near a copse of tree, which gave an indication of the size, which would have been 45 to 50 feet long, or hovering over the ground, about 8 feet from the ground, and cast its light. It cast shadows, from the trees, so we could see that it was hovering, which was a very interesting, very, very, very extraordinary thing to see at that area one evening. It was early summer in May or late spring, very cold, drizzly, absolutely perishing cold, really freezing. And we sat there, and at about 11:30, we suddenly, I speaking for myself, I felt that I was being watched, and turned around and saw this extraordinary column of light, and I can't describe this light. It was bright, white, yellow kind of light, almost like looking straight in the sun. A very, very, very bright light. Long candle shape, just standing there. We saw it for 3 or 4 minutes. And although we all had cameras and we were ready to photograph it, nobody's taken a photograph of it. Nobody thought of taking a picture of it. And yet we saw it for 3 or 4 minutes, and then it just completely blinked out. Just suddenly like that. It didn't fly away, it didn't diminish in size, it just blinked out. And reappeared half an hour later, closer to us. The first time it appeared on our right, the second time it appeared on our left. The second time it was about 50 to 70 feet away from us. And the same tall candle shape of light just standing there above a wooden fence, and you could see the fence very clearly, cast its light on it. You could see that it was hovering about the fence, and it was 50 to 60 feet high, 45, 50 feet high. Same bright white, yellow light. Again, we saw it for several minutes. So quite a few of us, few people. They're all equipped with cameras and everything else and a video camera, and nobody thought of taking a picture, which was very strange because we went there to photograph anomaly, and we weren't. Nobody had the idea of doing it at the time. Although as soon as it disappeared, we all said, "Well, we took a picture," but nobody did. It was very strange. That was one had a distinct impression of being watched, and it was as if we were watching and they were watching, and I don't know what it is, but it certainly wasn't something of the ordinary realm of life that we live in normally. It was a glimpse of something else, and I don't know what. Almost as if I thought afterward, almost as if one had cut a little, had cut into the fabric of our world, and one was able to see a glimpse of a sunlight behind somehow.
Beautiful description.
Well, I think that yes, I've given these questions a lot of thoughts over the years, and I firmly believe that the world we live in is not as simple as we think, and that there's far more unknown than there is known. In fact, I think we know a tiny fraction of what there is to be known. The world is full of mystery, and it's very arrogant to think that we understand the kind of world we live in. And I firmly believe that this phenomena of crop circle and so on is here to enable us to start perceiving that our world is not only spatial, as we discovered 400 years ago when we realized the Earth wasn't flat but was a spatial entity. That actual fact we are a multidimensional world, and we are starting to perceive, to connect sometimes with other dimensions. Yeah, I think that is important, and I think that in the future it will be seen as very naive to imagine that we're just one-dimensional. We're multidimensional, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to perceive that. I don't know where that will lead us. I find that quite fascinating. Yeah, but it's not. The idea of one dimension is rather boring. I think it's far more mysterious than we think. Far more.
Thank you, Francine. And now, with the help of a time machine, let's take a helicopter flight over the Barbary Castle Triangle. Well, just kidding. Actually, computer graphics has been the field that I've been involved in for almost 20 years now. And making and modeling a three-dimensional object of Barbary Castle in the form of a tetrahedron has been the main project that my friend Ed Arroyo and I have been working on. Here's how we do it. Using a kind of digital construction set, if you will, we make the shape out of spheres and rods. That's all we need to make this shape. And then we assign different properties to these parts. There are reflective properties, colors, textures, and here you see the result. Over the past 12 months or so, we've been slowly evolving more and more intricate models. That spherical helix was based on Barbary's sun circle. And the ratchet in the crop formation has become this transparent snail shell shape. Most recently, Ed has been experimenting with lighting techniques. We figure that the top point of Barbary Castle represents the throne of God, so it has that bright light to it. Well, these are all just experiments. Stay tuned for future developments. In my opinion, the work of John Martineau is the most important research being done on the crop circles. His geometrical analysis proves, more than anything else, that the mind behind the crop circles is absolutely extraordinary.
It's like delving into the mind of an artist. And I think it is, to some extent, that's one of the best definitions I've heard. It certainly defines my approach. And that what sort of come out of my research has just been very much the delving into the mind of an artist to see why the shapes are beautiful to look at and try and decipher that. This was the Upton Scudamore formation in 1987. This formation, I think, is the most textbook and educational from the point of view of geometry. What I've done in this diagram is to superimpose equilateral triangles, 4 of them, around the central circle. And you can see that each one of those equilateral triangles exactly contains the central circle, and also one of its points will mark the center of one of the outer lying satellites. So there is a sort of threefold geometry expressed 4 times here. And the thing So what's happened here is I put a square around the central circle of this formation, and that first square is exactly touching the inner edge of the satellite circles. And then, of course, you can draw an imaginary circle around that square, another square around that circle, which gets you back to the point which the triangle defined. And by this method alone, you could actually draw this formation on paper with a ruler and compass. And it's a very classical way of proportioning a cross. An interesting development occurs when you take the outermost radius of the whole formation, as here, and draw an octagram, which is an 8-pointed star, and you can see that the central circle is contained within the octagram from the outer edge of it. And the octagram, we'll be seeing more of it in a second. So it's almost as though you could say that the equilateral triangle expressed a very simple proportion, centers the satellites from the central circle. The square expressed it sized the satellites kind of rather nicely and picked up their centers. And the octagram fits the overall size of it and sort of unifies it. And as well as the octagram, a pentagram does the same job as an octagram, but in a slightly different way. The proportion expressed where the arms cross on a pentagram is 1 over the golden section squared. And, or looking at it the other way, it is the golden section. And thought now we'd move on and do a few case studies of crop circles, try and put our heads around the whole thing. This was, of course, Alton Barnes in 1990. Here's some triangles expressing, in this case, the fact that the element on the right, its center lies at half the distance from the main ring circle as the element on the left. And a system of triangles here does pick up the center of one of the grape shot. It doesn't do the job very well, the triangles, and we'll see that. But the pentagrams do the job much better. And here we've got the pentagrams, again, pointing up against the main axis of the formation, with their arms crossing, which is the 1 over the golden section squared proportion, on the radius of the central, of the circles, in both cases there. And they're pinpointing not only the distance at which that grape shot sits from the radius of the circles, but also the angle at which it's sitting with respect to the pentagram. And in addition, the pentagrams are spaced by a method which is very elegant. You couldn't move the right-hand pentagram to the left or to the right at all. And that pentagonal grid can be fully developed like that, which looks hideously complicated, but it's a self-reinforcing grid, and it actually sizes the length of the whole formation on the right-hand side, and the proportions of the small ring on the right-hand side as well. Very, very elegantly. This is a principle of ring spacing. It seems to pop up in all pictograms where there's a ring. The ring can be used, you bounce the ring along, and it seems to pick up other key points and features along the way. If we take a more complicated formation like Barbary Castle and draw an imaginary circle through the centers of 2 of the elements, the sun wheel in the top and the sort of moon symbol or spurred ring in the bottom left, then we can see some interesting things, because the size of the central element in this case, or the rings, the system of rings, is defined from the crossing from that by a Star of David. But I mean, more importantly, I think here it's very interesting that the bits at Barbary Castle weren't spaced equally at 120 degree divisions. The centre of the spiral in the bottom right is picked up or pointed to by the equilateral triangle, but the feature on the left, bottom left, isn't. And a lot of people noticed this. It was asymmetrical, and this is nicely explained in a second. System of squares here sizes the outer circle to the size of the sun wheel and the bottom left-hand element, but in particular the sun wheel's particularly easy to see. All I've done is to draw a square, again through that same point, the centre of the sun wheel, and then rotate it by 45 degrees. And that exactly sizes it. It's very nice at that distance. And that system of squares also, again, sizes the central elements, i.e. the whole ring system in the middle, from that beginning. And in this diagram, I've placed a pentagram pointing due east, which may seem a bit of a fiddle, but I'll show you why it's not in a second. But the pentagram, as in the Upton Scudamore one, you draw on the basic size of the element that you're dealing with. It's the outermost element. So the outermost radius there, not counting the spiral, which again is a bit of a fiddle, I suppose, but the repeated outermost radius is to the outer edge of the two rings, the north and the southwest. And I've drawn the pentagram pointing due east, and you can see that its arms cross, first of all, defining the size of the central element. That's exactly the same proportion as in the Upton Scudamore and the Alton Barnes ones that I've just shown. And particularly note here that the pentagram pointing east has actually picked up in the bottom left-hand corner the exact angle at which that bottom left-hand or south-western spur is coming off the Barbary Castle crop formation. It's a very precise angle. Looking at the snail, there's in fact a hidden sort of overlapping ring at the snail. You draw a circle through the two grape shafts at the top, and then draw that same circle the same side from the head of the snail, and that comes back and touches the actual shell of the snail. And then if you draw the shell of the snail based on the head, it picks up the point at which it bends. And also that first circle terminates one of the antenna that's coming back, and you picked up the right angle on that as well. And looking at north in that diagram, you can begin to see a northerly edge alignment coming in as well, between the shell and the head. You can see in the diagram there a system of north-south, east-west edge alignments. And their edge alignment's so elegant. If you take the double-banded ones running from left to right, they're actually picking up the thickness of the ring at the point where the central sort of radioactive or axe head symbol splits, and carrying that radius across to actually define the width of the two little circles on the edge. And there are edge alignments everywhere in it, running north, south, east, west, which one wouldn't expect to find, really, if it had been hoaxed. I don't think, because he would have had to have scaled it. Schnabel, I think, claimed it. He would have had to have scaled it in that field at the exact size where those edge alignments would come into being. If he'd done it any bigger, or if he'd done it any smaller, in that field, at that place, none of those would have been there. And of course, being an eightfold formation, it makes sense to look for eightfold geometry, and that's shown there, with the size of the central circle being defined by the circle within an octagram, where the octagram is drawn to the inner edge of the outer ring. And the outer elements are sized by another outer octagram. I'm running out of time very quickly. This is interesting as well. When the pentagram is placed pointing straight up the formation, its bottom right-hand spoke pointed exactly to Silbury Hill. That was to the degree, to the very top of Silbury Hill.
Thank you, John. So, if you'd like to join the Center for Crop Circle Studies, or if you want pictures, or videotapes, or information about how to go to England, why, contact us at this address.